This is reporter Julie Spencer, and I'd like to welcome you to Newsline Iowa City. Please join me today as we take a trip to the Herbert Hoover Presidential Library and Museum in West Branch. Curator Melanie Wier will talk about and take us on a tour of their latest exhibit, America's First Ladies.
Welcome to the Herbert Hoover Presidential Library and Museum. The exhibit we currently have on display is America's First Ladies. And this exhibit has a piece from every First Lady, so there's 44 ladies represented. However, on this show, we're only going to show you a handful of what we have in the exhibit. This exhibit starts out with Martha Washington, and for Martha Washington we have a reproduction dress. Some of the dresses we have are reproduction because the dresses are so old, they're rare, it's hard to find. However, the Eisenhower Presidential Library has a fine collection of reproduction dresses, and so that's what this one here is on Martha Washington. But as you can see, it's very detailed. The flowers on it are hand-painted. Martha Washington was very influential in helping her husband with the Revolutionary War. Martha described herself as steady as a clock, busy as a bee, and cheerful as a cricket. And she lived up to her own assessment of herself. Martha spent nearly a decade by her husband's side in the army camps during the Revolutionary War and tirelessly made clothing for the soldiers from her home in Mount Vernon and at the camps. She was known for her kindness in words and actions. Like Martha Washington, Dolly Madison was a widow that went on to marry a future president. She was 25 and he was 43. The dress that we have is a yellow gown, and she also wore a yellow gown at the inaugural ball. Abigail Adams was one of America's most influential First Ladies. She was the wife to John Adams. She was well educated, she was very outspoken, she was kind of known as an 18th century feminist and called Mrs. President. One of her most important roles, as she saw it, was her ability to provide peace of mind to her husband, John. Mary Todd was born to a socially prominent Kentucky family, but her future husband joked that while God spelled his name with one D, the Todds of Lexington required two. Young Mary Todd was fluent in French, an accomplished horsewoman, and an excellent student. Charming yet temperamental, she was intensely ambitious. She gave strength to her husband while needing it for herself throughout his stormy presidency. Mrs. Lincoln witnessed her husband's assassination at Ford Theater, an event that traumatized her. After her husband's death, she returned to Chicago and then traveled abroad. Upon her return, another son, Tad Lincoln, died. Her erratic behavior led Robert, her only surviving son, to have her committed to a private sanitarium. After 4 months, she was released and lived with her sister in Springfield, Illinois. Mary Lincoln tried to escape the public view with even more travels abroad, but her health required her to return to Springfield, where she died. So this is Mary Todd Lincoln's dress, and then we also have her opera glasses and a fan that is made out of ostrich feathers. And this is Edith Wilson's outfit that she wore during the signing of the Treaty of Versailles. And this is actually a designer suit. It's a Worth suit. And so if you look at it, there's a lot of detail, even the lining of the jacket, and just it's very well made. And then there's the matching hat, which is actually a reproduction. So Mrs. Wilson was soon immersed in war work. A flock of sheep appeared on the White House lawn, and their wool was sold to benefit the Red Cross. Secret Service agents, for the first time, protected a First Lady. In 1918, Edith became the first presidential wife to travel abroad, accompanying her husband to the Versailles Peace Conference. And she was at his side as he campaigned against America for his proposed League of Nations and drew a protective shield around Wilson following his massive stroke in October 1919. So tightly did she control access to the stricken chief executive that she was dubbed Mrs. President by lawmakers critical of petticoat government. In fact, she cared nothing for politics and everything for the health of the man she called my precious. Few American lives have had the historical impact as that of Eleanor Roosevelt. From childhood, when her mother called the serious little girl Granny, and her adored father surrendered to drinking, Eleanor identified with the society's outcasts. According to her cousin Alice, never has a woman so comforted the distressed or so distressed the comfortable. She bore 6 children in 10 years with the knowledge that her husband loved a younger, prettier woman. Out of such trials emerged a different Eleanor Roosevelt. Her newfound purpose enabled her to teach in a New York settlement house, even as Franklin served as governor, and made her rethink her old opposition to women's suffrage. It cast her as FDR's eyes and ears. Eleanor's White House code name was Rover, and it made her the most highly visible First Lady in history. So Lou was actually from Iowa. She was from Waterloo. She was very close with her father and learned a lot of skills for him, especially his love of the outdoors. So they would go on camping trips together. And then she met Herbert Hoover in school when they were at Stanford. And so it was 1899 when they were married. And then they moved to China during the Boxer Rebellion. So Lou was the first lady to speak on the radio, and also the first to cause a storm of protest by entertaining the wife of a black congressman in the White House. She hired an assistant to help with cataloging the White House and its historic furnishings, a feat not attempted again until Jacqueline Kennedy served as First Lady. The White House continues to use this catalog and numbering system that Lou created. The Hoovers welcomed a record number of guests during their term. Most of the visits addressed a changing economic climate. A fire in the West Wing in December 1929 reflected the economic blaze set off on Wall Street 2 months earlier. Soon the First Lady was appealing for donations to help the jobless. She answered thousands of requests for Depression-era assistance herself, while continuing to serve as the president of the Girl Scouts, welcoming important artists to the White House, and shielding her husband from emotional turmoil of the bleak years. After leaving Washington in 1933, Mrs. Hoover enjoyed life in Palo Alto, California, with her husband and grandchildren and her Girl Scouts, as well as numerous Stanford friends and admirers. When she died in January 1944, her husband found Lou's desk filled with checks sent by strangers she had once helped financially. Lou simply hadn't bothered to cash them, maintaining her belief in quiet Quaker generosity. This desk that is pictured is the Monroe desk from the White House, and Lou liked it so much that she had copies made. We actually have the Monroe desk now. That was hers. And it's part of a set, and some of the pieces are actually still at the White House. This painting here was actually in the Stanford home. And this is a Minerva painting, goddess, and there was actually several other pieces that went with it. And this is Lou, and this is her dress. Lou was kind of known as an outdoorsy person, kind of a tomboy. She was involved with Girl Scouts, so a lot of people don't really think of her as having a, real frilly dress. And so that's kind of why we put this one on display. And also, we used it as inspiration for the exhibit. Behind me here is Lou Henry Hoover's 1929 touring Cadillac. This was given to her as a gift, and she liked to drive it. She would take it around and drive friends around, much to the dismay of the Secret Service and of the public. So there were numerous newspaper articles written about her, just going on and on about how could the First Lady be driving around town and what a scandal it was. But she did enjoy to drive. So this is Mamie Eisenhower with her signature pink gown. She wore this gown when visiting the Queen, and we also have a picture here of her wearing the gown with the Queen. It's kind of interesting that the Queen's gown is very similar. So Mamie Eisenhower was the daughter of a Boone, Iowa meat packer, and she was 6 years younger than the handsome soldier she married in 1916. It was the start of a globe-trotting adventure that would take her to 29 different homes in as many years of Army life, before bringing her in 1953 to the White House. Earlier in their marriage, when Ike was about to go off to Army maneuvers and leave his young bride for a few weeks, Mamie protested to no avail. Eisenhower put his arm on her shoulder and explained, "You have to understand something, Mamie. The Army will always come first." So here we have a formal gown for Pat Nixon, and this is actually her favorite dress. She said it always made her feel good, so she wore it on a few occasions, and it's actually the same dress that she's wearing in her official White House portrait. Here we have Betty Ford's dress. Betty started out as a dancer who studied with Martha Graham before taking a job in Grand Rapids, Michigan, as head fashion coordinator at a department store 3 weeks after marriage to General Ford in October of 1948. This dress is Nancy Reagan's that she wore during her Just Saying No campaign. So she wore it to a basketball game, and we have the photo in which the basketball players are hoisting her up to the net, and then we also have a signed basketball. Mrs. Reagan was a key advisor to her husband throughout his presidency. Much of the concern she felt for his well-being stemmed from anxiety following the assassination attempt on the president in March of 1981 and his cancer surgery 4 years later. This dress is Rosalind Carter's, and she wore this at a White House concert. Rosalind Carter promoted many causes, including ERA, volunteerism, and the rights of aged Americans. Thank you for watching. And if you would like to learn more about America's First Ladies, this exhibit will be up for the next few months, and the Hoover Museum is open from 9 to 5 daily.